Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Setala,
And I'm Casey MacBride.
and this is Crazy Shamans. Welcome, everyone, for your weekly dose of Kukliai, fun and play through sacredness. I'm totally messing up what I wanted to say, but you get the
Yeah, sacred play, man. It's all about the sacred play. And this is something personally, like I'll go through periods where, and everybody does, where we get kind of serious about whatever it is that we're doing. And then I just remember, like, man, this whole existence here is just this tiny little blip, but it's really just this dance of energy. And it's the most beautiful thing when you're able to engage in a way where you're not like heavily invested in like any given outcome or anything. You're able to just truly enjoy what's happening in the moment. Like I was talking to my neighbor down there the other day, and he was telling me, he's like, well, there's so much stuff to worry about these days. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, well, we had the coronavirus and this, and like a lot of people are worried about their jobs and all that. Like, I got to worry about my kids. And I said, no, you don't have to worry about anything. There's never a reason to worry. He's like, of course there's reasons to worry. You have to worry. And I said, no, you don't. So for example, someone might say like, okay, so you have a bill you have to pay. You don't know if you're going to be able to pay it. Well, you have to worry about that, right? No. When the time comes, that bill comes, and there's one of two things. Either you can pay it or you can't. Worrying about it, what does that do? It solves nothing. Worrying is like praying for that which you don't want to happen. So take action when action needs to be taken around an event, sure, but worrying, there's never a point to that. And when you stop worrying about things and just enjoy and realize, because there's people worried about like, oh, the world's going to crap and all this stuff and like all this horrible stuff. Well, is that really happening to you right now? Because here's what like when I'm talking to this guy, here's what I'm seeing. I'm sitting in a pool right now. You're on a chair by a pool, and it's a beautiful day outside, and the birds are chirping, and the sun is shining, and it's just all beautiful. But in your mind, all this chaos is happening. That's how powerful we are. How powerful we are.
And one of the universal laws or rules of how we want to look at it is energy flows where your attention goes. So if you're worrying about something, what are you empowering the universe to bring more of to you? Versus like Casey, he's bringing more of this beauty that the earth is. And I know you have this huge fascination with Japanese culture. Have you gotten around to watching Shogun yet?
No. Is it it's a movie or an anime?
It's a mini series. So it's like it was a 5-part mini series. But the significance is, as you were talking about that, one of the scenes, the lady talking to the main character, she's talking about worrying. And she's like, well, if worrying will change it, go ahead and worry, because then it's changed and you don't have to worry. If worry won't change it, then why worry? Like it's basically what you said, but it was really eloquently put in this little mini series moment.
Yeah. I saw a graph set up, and it was like, there's a problem or whatever, and it was like, can you fix it? Yes, then why worry? Can you fix it? No, then why worry? Like, so either way, like there's no point in.
Yeah, but the question to be is, well, what else is possible here? That is like the energy of having a different possibility around whatever it is that's showing up that's preferred or not preferred. Or, well, if that's going to happen anyway, how much fun can I have instead? It's like just in the allowance of whatever the situation is, and then really being in the space of what else is possible.
Yeah. And, there may be situations that are uncomfortable and things that in the moment, we may not know why they're happening. But, I can guarantee you some of the worst suffering I've ever experienced in my life has led me to some of the most beautiful places, some of the most beautiful realizations, and some of the most beautiful experiences.
Yeah. One of the things that we say in AA is you get to the place where you are not looking at the past as bad or anything like that. In fact, it becomes an asset in which you can help your fellow travelers on this plane. So even the greatest moments of despair, what if that's an asset to create change and possibility for yourself and others in this kingdom of we that we're in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. And that really is, that's a big part of what we do with, our work in shamanic healing, is taking that sort of charge around, like the heaviness of the past off of things. People who suffer from, like chronic depression and anxiety, often something happened in their past that just really stuck with them and cause a lot of heaviness, hucha, to build up like in a certain part of their energy field. And then that causes like a certain amount of gravity, because hucha is dense energy and it has a kind of pull and a gravity to it. So when an imprint is triggered, then your thoughts just get pulled into kind of this endless cycle surrounding whatever that thing was. If you can remove the heaviness from that and realize it was just an event, it was just a thing, it's just a memory at this point. It's no longer real. It's no longer happening unless you make it happen in your mind. And when you can take the charge off of that, then you can begin to see that as, oh, this is something that led me to where I am today. And, you decide how happy you are with where you're at.
Yeah, I think there's a saying like pain is an experience, suffering is a choice. So you don't have to suffer at all. You don't have to suffer at all. There was something else to that, but it just went poof. Oh, what the explanation of hucha being heavy, on the homepage of my website, Setala.com, there's this video that I have that says Take the Leap. And I explain hucha in a way that it's like a hot air balloon. And all these huchas are those sandbags that are tethering the balloon down. And it's not a matter of getting rid of the bag. It's a matter of recognizing that that bag is actually fuel to fuel the fire that's going to raise you up into the next dimension of awareness. And so not to look down on any experience, but how could you use that as propulsion for possibility?
Oh, I like it. That's beautiful. Speaking of suffering as a choice, I don't know if you know this, but the Buddha, after he had his awakening, after he became enlightened, he had people, who he would talk to and things, and he got enough people interested where they were begging him to give a talk because, there were monks and things back then. He wasn't like the original monk or anything. They were like the ascetic monks and like different, like religious practices. And so, but they knew that this guy, they could see just his demeanor and the way he was, they knew he was enlightened. And so they were begging him to give a talk, like, tell us, like, share with us, teach us, like, give a talk on what you've realized, what you've learned, like, what is the truth? And so he finally agreed. And for the longest time, he'd say, no, I could never talk about it. It's too simple. Like, no one would understand. It's like, I can't explain it. It's too simple. No one would get it. But finally, he agreed to give a talk. And so he's sitting, and there's all these people around, and they're expecting him to talk about like these giant, big ideas and give them this mind-blowing like lesson and things. And all he talks about is suffering. Suffering the whole time, and how there's two types of suffering. There's physical, dukkha. Dukkha is the word for it, I think, in Sanskrit. So there's physical dukkha and mental dukkha. And he says physical dukkha. So physical suffering is, everyone experiences that. You can't escape that. There's going to be some degree of physical suffering just coming along with being incarnate in a physical body. But mental suffering, mental dukkha, is always a choice. It is always 100% of the time created by us. So we can create our world surrounding suffering. We can choose to suffer in reaction to our own other suffering and create a whole just feedback loop of constant suffering. Or we can choose to break that cycle, choose to become aware, choose to be present, and choose to experience the vast peace that is always here. That is our true nature. There's another version of that story where I've heard it two ways, because I've heard that's the first talk he gave, and I've also heard the first talk he gave was they asked if they begged him, same thing, same kind of story. They begged him to give the talk, and they're expecting him to give this big talk, and then he sits there and he just looks and he picks up a flower and he just stares at it. And he's just staring at the flower. And he sits there for like an hour, and everyone starts to get really uncomfortable, and people are like, "What is he doing? What is going on?" and then one of his students, one of the people in the crowd, got it, and they woke up and they became present in that moment, and then that was his first disciple.
Oh, and see, so his first talk wasn't even a talk, so I could see where that might be a point of view about what came first, because he didn't say anything.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's something to be said, that maybe as we're going through this life, that the greatest contribution that you can be is just showing up and being you. And there's nothing you have to do or say, but it's that beingness that can hold the space for somebody else to step into a possibility. And what if that's it? What if you don't have to go through a whole rigmarole of things? It really is about being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I'm sure you probably experienced things like this, but I know throughout my life, ever since my awakening, I have had even just random people, like in the grocery store, just open up to me about everything going on.
Oh, that's been my entire life.
Yeah. So
Hoochie
like,
dumping.
yeah. I remember like what I have this. This is one of the more recent ones. But I was in Giant Eagle, the grocery store right next to my house, and I'm sitting there in line waiting to check out, and this woman comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Oh, good." And she says something, started out like something about like, "Oh, you know, crazy line or whatever," some small talk. I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, my father just died," and then it was just whoa, just like a huge. But I just sat there, you know, and I was fully present for that, you know, no judgment, no, like I wasn't thinking about what she was saying. I'm just fully present with what she was saying. And she kind of like had an emotional release, and then she thanked me. She's like, "I don't even know why I'm thanking you, but thank you." And it really, I didn't do anything. All I did was sit and I gave my full conscious present awareness without any thought, without any emotion, without any judgment, just the pure presence. And that was like a healing experience for her. And well, I don't think she was aware of it, but her essence was aware that I had that in me to be able to hold that space. So she came to me, even probably not knowing she was even going to have that dump, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, that I was just in energetically in the space of agreeing with that. You were the space, because that's like when we can go from that duality fight where every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and be the space that for the people that are in this fighting mode, they're not getting that resistance, and it lets them fall into that space of possibility in order to have a release or a healing or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that space, that non what do you call it, like the non-duality reality, the oneness,
One-ality, I call it.
the one-ality, that's what you call it. Yeah, I was thinking of the word you used. The one-ality, you know, like you said, there's no subject-object relationship. There's nothing, there's no observer-observed, there's no subject-object. And so in that, like everything falls away. And if you're able to be in that space yourself, if you're able to fully hold that space while still being here as a human being, especially in the middle of a conversation, that's like a really miraculous thing. And I heard there was some famous quote that said like every interaction between two humans is a sacred experience. And then someone, I think it was Eckhart Tolle or someone, like amended that, and he was like, "I'll amend that and say every interaction between two humans is the potential to be a sacred experience if there is presence on at least one side of the conversation." Because if it's two people who are just purely interacting from the mind, then they're just viewing each other through labels, and they're not truly experiencing the other human being. But when you become fully present and aware and are experiencing that person for what they are, as just the isness that you are, and recognizing yourself in them without even that conceptual thought, then it becomes a really powerful sacred meeting.
Yeah, it has the energy of namaste, which I think a rough translation is "may the God in me greet the God in thee for the highest good," and like having the awareness of the other spark of divinity, and just the awareness of it, just greeting that, and just being in the awareness that they are, is a huge space of possibility if you can really stick and hang with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's this one neighbor downstairs who I always talk to. And he's retired and everything, and so he's always like sitting down there, and he tells me, like, every time I come down to talk to him, he's like, "You know what, just you being around me, like, you don't even have to do anything, just you being here makes me feel better and is healing for me." He said just my presence is like a healing thing for him, and so he's like always thanking me for just being me, for just being the presence that I am.
And to everybody watching today and in the future, what if, when you can truly be you, your presence is your present to this world?
Absolutely. And that is one of the most incredible things you can give another person, is pure divine attention and awareness without any judgment, because people are so used to being judged, I think, you know?
Yeah, it's in that space that people can truly be healed. If you can be in a complete allowance of who they are, it gives them the space to let go of the places where they've judged themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's fifth level healer stuff, bro.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. No, I just heard a ding. That was why I stopped. I was like, was that me or you?
I heard a ding. I got a message, but I had my headphones on. You shouldn't hear.
I heard
the message. That's weird. Through my headphones, that's like, how crazy is that? Oh, oh, that was my brother Brian just sending me a note. So,
Oh, beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
how does it get better
So,
than that?
so anyway, I'm excited. This is going to be interesting. I have a wedding. I was just telling Hank this before the live stream. I have a wedding. My cousin's getting married this weekend. And I was just reading something. It was like a few days ago on Reddit. It happened to pop up about like wedding culture, and like how the one person was saying that like they thought wedding culture was kind of like a toxic thing where it's like people spend all this money on this extravagant experience and like sometimes end up like broke because of it, just because it's like the culture surrounding it. And then other people had a lot of other kind of like counterpoints to that about how like people come together and like on one hand people give gifts, usually money, so that you usually end up kind of at least maybe breaking even. I don't know, I've never had a wedding myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics around weddings and stuff, but it doesn't have to be expensive. Our wedding in Germany was like just a couple $1,000s, and the wedding here, we didn't spend a ton of money on it. You don't have to. It's the people, but there does seem to be this like pressure to do like these big extravagant things because that's what's expected, or all that craziness.
Yeah. So it's pretty wild to me, but it's an interesting experience. Like I was watching another video. This YouTuber was saying, and he was like a married guy, and so he made a video exploring like why do people get married? Why? What is the reason for it? And he kind of broke down like a list of like some of the main things he could find, like talking to people, and a lot of the times like people aren't really even all that aware of why they're getting married, other than it's just kind of the thing to do. Or for like tax purposes and things like that. But he was kind of posing the question of, if you're in love with the person and things are going fine, like what need is there for you to get what need is there to get married?
Well, because also wedding, like in general, how society looks at it, it is a definition and conclusion. And does that limit what you could actually be with a partner? Food for thought. And if you look at the carol, like culturally, it's so different. Like their marriage is only for politics, and the carol would throw coca leaves and ask if two people could get married. Will it benefit the villages? Otherwise, there is no marriage. That's only for, and will it bring two villages closer together? Is there a political need for this? Because it has nothing to do with partners. Most of the carol might have children with a couple different women and things like that. So like the whole cultural significance around weddings and marriage and what that is and isn't can be completely different culturally. And so what if we could step out of doing it for any purpose of culture, and really does it sing to the soul, and will it create more for your journey?
Right. Yeah, I know. I remember the one friend I was talking to. I could never understand this, but he got married early. I think it was like right when he was 18 is when he got married. He remembered they had enough money saved up where he's like, all right. He said to his soon-to-be wife at the time, he's like, we can either have a wedding or we can get a house. And he's like, think about this, honey. We can get a house or we can have a one-night wedding. And she's like, I want the wedding. So they chose the wedding.
Wow.
Over the house.
But really, it doesn't have to be all that crazy expensive.
But she she was young, and she had the like Disney princess idea of having to have the wedding thing.
Yeah, and well, my wife is from Germany, and we kind of did it the German way, and it wasn't elaborate or anything. It was just a day being with the people that are close to you and all that. And I was telling Casey before air, because we were talking about weddings, we started in the morning. Everybody was like with us the whole day to the registry office. We had a horse and carriage going through the city. Then you had coffee and cake with your guests, and then there was the party, and then the dinner, and then we ended up at 4:30 in the morning finally calling it a night, and then being back with everybody at like 9 or 10 in the morning for like a morning brunch type of thing. And it didn't, the only thing that we had to pay ourselves, because our parents paid for some of it, was the bar tab, and that was more than the wedding. The bar tab, because it wasn't like open bar. They're like, we'll cover everything but the wedding, and like that was like the most expensive thing, because man, Germans can drink, I'll tell you. Between beer and like Jaeger bombs are the drink of the night. There were so many people getting Jaeger bombs. It's like,
were they really Jaeger bombs? Is that really a German thing?
Yeah, like the Red Bull and this. It was like Jägermeister. They were like drinking them like crazy, and I'm looking like there's like hundreds of Jaeger bombs on this bill. It's amazing.
I had no idea that was actually a German thing. I thought that was an American invention.
I'm not saying it's a German invention, but they definitely were drinking it at our wedding. And the restaurant we had it at was called the Jaeger Hut, so it was like the Hunter Hut, you know.
Oh yeah.
And so like Jaeger was like one of their big things, and it was like, wow, the Germans can really drink and party, man. I've never been to a wedding like this that lasted till the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, man, it's wild. I remember being to a few weddings when I was younger. I think I remember one wedding where it was like before I was old enough to drink, but of course, you know, like it's a big Irish family and like cousins and things are like, you know, sneaking you drinks and all that. And like I just remember getting like so ridiculously like out of my mind drunk. And like, yeah, weddings can be crazy. Weddings can be really wild, especially when they have open bars, man. Yeah, I've seen some wild parties at weddings.
Yeah,
Oh, man, it's really wild. To me, it's an interesting energy to be around too, to experience that, you know, like, especially with the, you know, and I find myself asking too, you know, there's all these people having this like wild party and like they're dancing and getting all crazy and yelling and all this stuff. And like a big part of me is like, if the drug alcohol wasn't involved, would it be like to this level?
if people could truly be themselves, I think so.
Right, but
I
is
don't
the
know.
average
No.
ego-attached American capable of that? You know what I mean?
It's a really good question. I don't know.
So,
But I would encourage, I don't know if they're doing anything like this, but there's like a ceremonial component where like the good wishes for the couple. And in Germany, the way they did it is they had this one box of wine that they boxed up and everybody there would write these notes and put it in with this box of wine, which is sealed for 7 years. And you open it on your 7-year anniversary. And
cool.
it's so like 7 years later, you're opening it because they call it the 7-year itch, like making it past that 7-year thing. Anya and I were never worried about that. We've been together since 1997. So like we already had, I think, the itch done at that point. But you then on your 7-year anniversary, you're like looking at all the wishes and the good vibes that people were doing, putting towards you. And really part of that is like what contribution can the guests be to the couple to help them step into the greatest possibility they can be together. And it's treated more as a party, but what if it could really be the spiritual and energetic contribution to the couple too?
I know, speaking of on the topic of weddings, because you know there's the kind of wedding that a lot of people in America associate with being like a wedding where it's like, you know, you have the like either like the church or you meet somewhere for like a little like actual wedding ceremony, and then you have the reception where everyone's just like dancing and drinking and partying. But I have a friend, and he was talking about it. I don't know if he's still going to do it because he already got legally married. They didn't really have, they had like a small ceremony. But he was talking about, since he is you know him, Jameson, who was on the show. He wanted to have a like a Viking, like pagan, like Viking style wedding in the forest.
And that's cool.
I just thought that would have been such a fascinating thing to experience.
Well, when you're ready to tie the knot, I bet you do some crazy shenanigans like that.
Yeah.
Viking wedding. Everybody will come with like, we'll get beards made like Casey's, and everybody will be there with full bearded awesomeness.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I have no plans for that at any point in the future, though. I'm all good on the marriage and children thing.
Well, you don't have to get married then, but there's got to be a celebration if you ever have a significant other of some kind of significance.
Oh, you know, you don't need an excuse to have a celebration.
Sure, well then have one.
Yeah, I had a celebration last 2 nights.
Yeah, man, everybody's like digging me like crazy, man. Like my wife is now like she know we were talking about her. She's like messaging me now. It's like
Her ears were burning.
Yeah, but it wasn't related to weddings, but it's still very interesting.
Yeah. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I did. You know, I do. I like to just celebrate. You know, just the joy of life. You know, all the good things happening. Like I had my buddy Mike over, who I hadn't seen in a long time, and he and my brother and I were hanging out here. Went for a swim in the pool. We're eating good food and hanging out, and then Tony and Mary came over last night, and we were again same thing, like having a great time here, swimming and all this stuff, and like just having a good old time. You know, like there doesn't need to be a reason to have celebrate and have a good time. Just like life is beautiful. Yeah.
All of life is a celebration
Yes,
where
it
you're
is.
celebrating the divine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful.
And ideally who you truly came to be in this world, because if you are tapping into even a small percentage of that, you really can celebrate that, because you can be you and bring your gift to the world. That's like just looping it back in. That's the real thing, because you're doing what you love and you're enjoying everything that shows up for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're being you, brother.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of people they don't even know like what it is they want to do in this world, like let alone like what their calling is. I don't even know what they desire to do. There's a lot of people I know like that. Like I had the one friend, he's always talking about how miserable he is at his job and how he hates this and he wants to get out of it. And I'm like, man, like think about, like you got your whole, you get so much life ahead of you, and you're always talking about how miserable you are at this job. Like, what do you really want to do? Like, there's got to be something that brings you joy, that you could, something you can do in order to sustain yourself, support yourself, while not being so miserable. And he's like, I don't know what my desires are, because I have no idea. I have no idea what I want. He had no idea what brings him joy. But he's just never sat down to.
From my point of view, from like CWG work, is that the beingness would come first, the joy would come first, and then what opportunities would you have to express that joy in the world? So what would it take for him to be able to ignite that inner joy that's already there? Because they say that joy is actually your natural state. We just have so much hooch crap laid on top of it. What would it take for you to drill a well down to that divine spark, just to let a little bit of that joy well up, and then just start to break away everything else that doesn't allow you to really be and express that into the world?
Have I ever told the story of the time I did a sensory deprivation tank with my brother?
I know, maybe way back, but I don't remember it. And I'm sure that people watching might not have seen that episode if you did. So go ahead and dive into it again.
So this is going right along with what you were just talking about. So my brother is the kind of person who he always has to be distracted. The second he gets home from work, he's plugged into his computer playing video games with online friends. If he's not playing video games, he's plugged into his phone. If he's not plugged into his phone, he's watching TV. And just so he never has a moment where he's just being. He's never truly present. He never just sits with himself. And he also numbs himself, in other ways as well. So around, I want to say, I don't know how many years ago, this might have been like 4 or 5 years ago or so, I started to get into floating sensory deprivation tanks, which for people who aren't familiar, there are these like pods, these giant pods filled with water with like 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt dissolved in them, so that when you lay on it, you're 100% buoyant. Like even if someone tried to push you under the water, it'd be difficult to push you on. So you don't have to, there's no effort. You just lay and it feels like you're floating. And ideally the tank should be heated to skin temperature also, so that you don't feel the water. And then your ears are under the water or plugged. So and then it's completely dark as well. Like the tank's closed and it's dark, so you have no visual input, no sensory input. It feels like you're floating. No sound, like nothing, no sensation. So you're deprived of all of your senses, and people have some really powerful experiences because of that. So I had floated, I think maybe like 4 or 5 times, and I told my brother I was having good experiences with it. And he's a highly anxious person as well, suffers from a lot of anxiety and things, and he was fascinated with it, but he was also very nervous. So he was like researching it, looking stuff up, researching people's kind of like trip reports or whatever you call it about, their experience in float tanks. He was getting really fascinated. He wanted to try it out, but there was a part of him that was afraid. And I was like, if you do want to go, I'll go with you. I'll go with you to the float. I'll drive us there so you don't have to drive.
And you offering to drive, that's huge, man.
I know. Yeah. Isn't that wild? So I did. So he agreed. We set it up. We set up our appointments at the same time. And so, I'm worried he's going to have like a panic attack. and like freak out while he's there. So I go into my tank and I'm sitting there in the first like few minutes. I'm like, oh man, like what if he's out there? What if he just went in? He's like freaking out, and I was like waiting outside there. Like I'm like, no, stop worrying about it. If there was really a big problem, they would probably knock on the door or something. So like it's not a big deal. Just don't worry about it. So I had my experience, relaxed, and I got out thinking like, I don't know if he's what I'm gonna walk out to. I walk out of the room and I look, and his door was next to mine. His door was still closed, and I'm like, oh, so at the very least, he like suffered through it, So I walk out, and there's a little area where you can like fix your hair. I was like fixing my beard and stuff, and I'm waiting, and then my brother comes out of the corner, and he's got a big smile on his face, and I was like, how was it? And he's like, dude, it was awesome, like use more explicit words than that, but like it was amazing. And I was like, oh dude, that's not so I asked him to tell me about it, and he said he was sitting there at first and he couldn't get his mind to be quiet, and he was like really worried and getting uncomfortable and like kind of like anxious and all this stuff, and he couldn't stop thinking a million miles a minute. And then something happened, something clicked, and he said it was just quiet in his head, and then he felt the most extreme, he described it as being like more pleasurable than like the best drug he's ever taken. But what he was describing to me, it was like the experience of pure bliss, like pure peace and bliss and like joy and ecstasy, like pure, like arising from consciousness. And so I tried to drive this into his head, because to him, he thought the tank did that to him. He didn't realize that was him. That was his. Mm-hmm. I tried to explain this to him, John, this is what happens when for just half an hour to an hour, you remove all the distractions, all the things you're used to numbing yourself with. Just remove that for a short period of time, and the most powerful bliss you've ever felt comes through. That's your natural state, John. That's who you are. And he still has difficulty understanding that to this day.
And for everybody watching, what would it take for you to perceive, know, be, and receive who you truly are in this ever-present moment of now? And anything that doesn't allow that, allow yourself to have a different possibility. Paq.
Yeah, but it's it really is. That's our natural state, like you said, is joy. And experiences like that really lend a lot of proof toward that. When people are deprived of all other distractions, all other sensory input, when their true self comes through, oftentimes it is an immensely blissful, joyous, peaceful experience.
Yeah. But it makes me want to go check out a float tank. Maybe I'm going to put that on my to-do list.
You've never floated?
Never floated. There's a place down in Akron called Mystic Floats that I had thought about. Like they have a whole center built just around floating. But I think there's some place
There's one across the street from me.
There you go. How many do they have?
How many pods?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe like 5 to 10.
That might be cool. I kind of have a vision for this now. So I'm going to nurture it and see what I might create around it.
You think you're getting some Paqos together to float?
I didn't say Paqos, but maybe. I don't know. I'll have to investigate. What's the place called?
True Rest Float Spa.
True Rest Float Spa. Okay. I wonder what's possible. I will see, because that's a lot closer than Akron, True Rest Float Spa. If they have 10, ideally I would want a place with a little bit more than 10, but I don't know what the biggest place is. I'll check it out. 10 is definitely a place to start.
Yeah.
Well, what else is possible, man? If I can't find one, perhaps
one of those units is like they're like tens of thousands of dollars.
So, what else is possible?
Well, you could buy your own.
Well, if I can't find a place with enough, then I'll create a place, perhaps. Why
Dude,
not?
that is one thing that that's a goal one day. Is when I have my own house and everything. One of the things that I want is my own sensory deprivation tank.
Most people get pools and have the pool guy come. Casey will have a sensory deprivation tank and have somebody come to clean that for him, right?
Yeah, right.
What else is possible?
One of the things about True Rest that I don't like is that they keep their tubs way too hot for me. Which I'm a polar bear given, but float tanks should not be hot. They're not meant to be like a hot tub. The water is supposed to be your skin temperature so that you're not aware of the sensation of the water. But they keep their tubs like hot, which gets really, really uncomfortable when you're trying to.
I wonder if they knew in advance if you wanted a lower tank or whatever, if they could accommodate that somehow.
They did that for me one time, and they were like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, we can do that for you anytime." And then I asked for it again, and they're like, "We can't do that."
Well,
So I guess it
that
depends
just
on.
who you ask. Be like, well, last time they did. So what else is possible? Is there someone else I could talk to?
Yeah.
How long
Yeah,
have you
but
been there anyway?
and I had a membership there at one point. When I was really into it, they have like 3 different tiers. They have one, like you pay a certain amount, and you get 1 float per month, and then like the next level is like 2 or 3 floats per month, and then like the top level is like 4 floats. So you get to go every week for a float. And so for a couple months, I did the every week float.
It's a franchise, actually. True Rest it's a franchising opportunity. You could open up your own float spa if you like.
Nice. Let's open one up right next door to the True Rest. It's already there.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm just like kind of taking a look at it. $65 float the first time, so that's 60 minutes of blissful. So it's 60 minutes long that you're in there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's an hour float. They say there are some purist floaters that say you need a minimum of like 3 to 6 hours. So you have the full experience, but the average person isn't.
And how soundproof are they?
Oh, you don't hear anything.
Because I've had a big interest in an anechoic chamber, because there's like all this, like in the Maharishi Effect book or 100th Monkey, they talk about this experience where when you're in like an anechoic chamber, you hear 2 frequencies. One is the sound of your nervous system, and the other is the frequency of the blood going through your veins. And that was like the experience that birthed to the entire like sound healing movement with Dr. John Boyu, where he had the theory you could tune the human body by bringing tuning forks into a chamber like that, and seeing that you could manipulate the pitch with tuning forks of the different sounds that your body makes. Anyway, just my own little personal. That would just be cool to experience and take some of my own tuning forks. And float take probably wouldn't be ideal for that. I got to find an anechoic chamber now.
Yeah, I doubt they let metal into a tank full of.
It wouldn't make sense anyway, because like you're floating, like having tuning forks. I just think you would need it without the water for that part of it. But that's really interesting. It's just leading me down a rabbit hole of possibility. I'm thinking all these things.
For anyone watching who is interested in trying sensory deprivation, I highly recommend it. It is a really beautiful experience. To me, the way I explain it is, it's like how did I used to say it? I don't know if I said it was like meditation on steroids or something like that, but kind of. It's like imagine meditating in warm outer space. If outer space was warm and safe, and you could meditate out there.
That you would like blow up because of the pressure difference. Of course, too.
That's the safe. Yeah,
safe. Right. Yeah, well, I went somewhere else with that, but yeah, that would be. I'm definitely putting this on it is on my bucket list as of right now. Now, I'm going to do it. Just a question of when.
Yeah, it's cool.
Maybe I'll document my experience and make a video out of it. We'll see.
There you go. Yeah. Stir Crazy Shamans float tank sensory deprivation documentary.
Possibly. Ooh, documentary that has an interesting energy, but I can't talk about it yet. That's cool. Sorry, talking out loud. What else? Or is that a good stopping point?
Sure. Yeah, it's been about 40 minutes. We've been rambling.
Yeah, unless there's a question. People are quiet today, but thank you all for tuning in. Be the invitation, share the video, and any final word of inspiration, Casey?
I love you guys.
And I love you guys more. No, truly, we're so grateful for everybody who watches and contributes just with your presence. Just like Casey said, his presence was his presence to the world for that lady, and you are the present to us by being able to be here to receive what we're putting out and to share it. So be the invitation and send people to our channel to experience everything else we have to offer.
Yes, absolutely. And well, I was halfway joking, but not really. In truth. In truth, we are all so divinely perfect. We're so much more than a lot of us realize. And, so really, I recognize that every single one of you are me, I am you, and we're all perfect and magical and divine. So I do love all of you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here, and stay aware. Nike.
Arpichai Sonkulai.